Learning is dependent on the pedagogical approaches that teachers use in a classroom, and it is imperative that the teachers evolve and adapt to pedagogies that makes education more experiential, learner-centered, discussion-based, and for most, enjoyable. In other words, the children should not only learn, but more importantly, learn how to learn. Last year, CBSE introduced a detailed document on subject-wise AI integrated lesson plans on Diksha portal. So I looked into this new unexplored domain of integrating AI in education. To exemplify, I chose a science topic from grade 6, parts of a flower. Now, usually, this includes teaching them about petals, sepals, stamen, and pistil. But apart from that, flower parts can also be categorized as per the four concentric circular arrangements of a flower named corolla, calyx, androecium, and gynoecium. I wanted my learners to acquire this concept of relating the generic terms of the flower parts to the four flower holes by engaging and experiencing it independently. So I started the lesson by making my students watch a video together that explained the generic names of these flower parts. This was followed by a discussion. Then for the next session, I asked them to bring a lily or a hibiscus flower along. I also hinted them about. The next day, I shared with my learners an AI tool. It was a link that I shared with them. It's called Teachable Machine. The details of this will be taken in the next slide. So to generate output from this tool, learners were supposed to dissect their flower as per the four flower parts and one by one place them in front of the camera. The tool would then indicate as which flower part belongs to which flower hole. The students were asked to record the response and fill a Google form later on. Further, the students were also asked to look up the meaning and functionalities of these various holes using another AI tool called AI Dungeon. And their drawing skills and understanding was also assessed using AutoDraw and AI-powered quiz maker respectively. Now, the ultimate engagement is to put the learner in charge of learning. Science is something that can be best explained by experiencing it. That is why we have these physics and chemistry practicals where learners learn to draw conclusions on the basis of the observations they are making. But it becomes rather difficult in the field of life sciences where results take longer time to build up. We sometimes have to rely on certain expensive equipments to even make certain observations. Last year, perhaps, virtual lab was the only way to conduct a life science experiment. So I thought of integrating a cost-effective life science experiment in one of my lesson plans that the children will be able to implement it in their respective homes. I believe that AI tool, the Teachable Machine, was a great option to make my example a success. Now, what is Teachable Machine? It is an AI tool based on a classification model. And in very simple words, you can quickly and interactively train a computer with either images or audio or even poses. So let me give you a glimpse on how I modeled the Teachable Machine that I collected, where I collected a lily flower and dissected. So let's have a look at this video. So I dissected my flower and I opened the AI Teachable Machine through google.com and I chose an image project. Now, as the four flower holes are already categorized, I simply made the four classes and typed the terms. Allowing to make the machine learn how corolla looks like, I recorded several pictures of these petals using the webcam. I did the same for the rest of the three holes as well. Now, after taking the pictures, I trained my model by simply clicking on the box that said train the model. And instantly I could see whether my model could correctly classify the flower holes or not. Lastly, I clicked on export my model, where I generated a web link and I shared it with my students either through WhatsApp or Microsoft Teams. It is that easy. Now, after this, of course, I asked them to fill out a Google form online, and that was analyzed later on. So, you see, from this activity, my classroom turned into a student-centered one. They were enthusiastic, curious, they were focused on the aim, They were gaining information independently. They were even problem solving, playing with the light and the background. They displayed a sense of achievement once the job was done. They felt responsible when I asked them that I'm banking on their input on the Google form. Additionally, they could even participate in this game any time of the day. So, in case they missed my class, they could attend this game later on. And some even shared it with their friends. So, you see, this engagement, this proactiveness was a proof enough that this approach of teaching learning process was a hit. If you don't believe me, believe them. Have a look at my learners testing and trying out the tool Teachable Machine.
Like a practical learning beyond books and practical learning with knowledge.
I have used this online platform, the Teachable Machine, and I've enjoyed it a lot. It's actually a fun game which gives me joy.
I was very excited to try it out, and it was a new experience for me as it was more practical and more enjoyable.
The next step was to convince my department members. So I was attending a meeting with my department staff and I suggested that implementation of AI in teaching could be a very good idea. And most of the teachers were clueless. Many of them even thought that AI is something which can be only deciphered by a computer expert. So I decided to take up this suggestion to our school principal, where I showed her the model that I had made on identifying these 4 flower holes. I must mention here that she was having a rough day. So when she started testing my model, her smile, her spirits, they went up. So she patted my back. Of course, she was convinced, and she helped me organize a separate meeting with the HODs of different departments. It was only to explain it to them, to break the myth that AI is something that can also be performed by a person who doesn't have a computer background or IT background. So next, I believe that I'm pretty sure that you are convinced from my personal experience that AI tool is actually a potential alternative to the mundane classroom pedagogy. Children, they love to experience something which is entertaining, and that is something we have to passion. This increases involvement, problem-solving attitude, develops questioning skills, and these are the basics of creating lifelong learners. As it happened in my case, for AI integration, when I asked to integrate these tools in my subject, science, I became the master trainer for many teachers in my school, and I trained many of them on different AI tools. So I think there must be one master trainer that must be trained. There must be one contact person in every school. And another thing is that we can also get inspired by these little ones. We can organize competitions where these learners can showcase the use of AI tools in explaining their lesson topics. And if we want to implement multidisciplinary pedagogies, I think we have to grade-wise decide a topic around which these subject teachers can start building up. And lastly, I would like to conclude my presentation by saying that, you see, we have to learn, if we are willing to adapt, if we are willing to train ourselves, and that is only how we can help the future and the other way around. So it all depends on our mindset.